thought without emotion is flat, it is impotent. Emotion without will is chaos. Will without alignment is tyranny. Emotional fire equals emotion plus will plus alignment. So emotion plus will plus alignment equates to emotional fire. Emotions, energy in motion. Many things compete for your emotional energy. And a lot of people don't know how to guard their emotional energy, their emotional fire. Guarding, learning to guard your emotional energy, your emotional fire, your astral light. This is what true mastery equates to. Emotions are very important. In fact, most of the power, I would say, of humanity comes from their emotions. I have read and heard and seen it conveyed that humanity is unique for our emotions. There are other life forms and such that don't have the range of emotional capacity that humanity possesses. And unfortunately, looking things from a gender perspective, males tend to be taught to ignore their emotions or suppress their emotions. Women, on the other hand, are that's more their arena traditionally. But essentially, mastery of your emotions equates to mastery of your destiny. Emotional fire is the astral light of the God force in motion through the human genetic vehicle. And emotional fire is the magnetism, is the heart-based magnetic directed astral light, the universal subtle medium, the field of images, imagination, magi, imagination, impressions, archetypes, polarity, and psychic force. Emotion is the kinetic charge that moves that field. You train your mind, you train your imagination to hold an image. And the more that you can invest that image with emotion, certainly it all ties together with more detail, the more will, which is the eye of your soul and the steering mechanism that directs this force, this God force of infinite intelligence, the source current behind all of existence. When emotion is unconscious, you are moved by the astral field. You're a pawn in the astral domination, the astral dominance of other more emotionally intelligent, other more emotionally masterful nodes of consciousness. When emotion is suppressed, as it is for most of males, but of course this is goes across many people have issues with expressing their emotions. And if they do express them, they're tending to express them in a very chaotic, dangerous manner. But when emotion is suppressed, you block the astral field. When emotion is mastered, you move the astral field. And that mastery is emotional fire. And there are three initiatory stages. within this mastery of emotional fire, which is the astral light, which is moving the morphogenetic field, the mind of God, which is causing change and conformity with your astral will. And the first stage is the alchemist. And this is self transformation. This is being able to transmutate the lower emotions, anger, lust, fear, and do something with them. This is the battlefield of inner polarity. And at this stage, the alchemist learns to observe emotional reactions, to transmute fear into clarity, lust into vitality, anger into force, pride into dignity. Here, the astral light is experienced internally as emotional storms and psychic impressions. The alchemist refines the fuel, lead into gold, reaction into directed force. And the more that you're able to master your reactions, and at the right opportune time, preferably the right astrological configuration, and you take all of these reactions that have been mastered and stifled, and you don't forget them, but you wield them into a directed force, and you release this force through the imaginal will of your soul. And then at that point, you are the magician, you are the magi, you are the magus. Your domain is influence. Your work is directed projection. The battlefield is the shared astral field of those in the know, of those aware at that level, of those practitioners who realize that the astral light is not personal. It is the collective imaginal medium. Emotions color it, symbols structure it, and will shapes it. And this is why you call it the battlefield of white and black magicians. Because the astral light, the astral emotional fire responds to charge plus image plus will. Whoever masters emotional charge can move forms in that medium. And the white magician aligns with the higher self, this integration. The black magician exploits polarity and fragmentation. Both operate in the same medium. The difference is alignment, what you align to or with. And so one personal caveat that I'll offer: when you align with source, when you have, in essence, sublimated your ego, your personal will to the divine plan, which is your higher self, the less hassle you have to deal with in life. The more you're protected without really having to think about it. What I'm getting at is, speaking from experience, that I have mastered my lower animal nature, and that is typically how the black magician would attack another person, through their lower animal nature, through bad habits, vices, and such. But when you transcend that and you have anchored your consciousness in the higher energy vortices, the higher assemblage points, you are immune essentially to all attacks from the black magician. And essentially at this point, you are defined as a theurgist, divine magic, holy magic, God magic, the transmutation of the human consciousness, the purification of the human consciousness into divine, godlike consciousness. This is the domain of union. This is the invocation of higher self, God force. And the battlefield is dissolved. There is no more battlefield. Now, I'm not saying that you still don't have your emotions that you contend with and have to manage, but you have a much higher perspective and are able to wield these emotions more like a scalpel. Yes, you have to move energy in your life. You will attract, especially when you're on the path of theurgy, if you're a chosen one, if you're attempting to manifest divinity here within this realm, you will become the target of others. But you will become in control, rather, and not so much prey to these attacks. And you are essentially, when you channel your soul force and have lodged your consciousness, encapsulated your consciousness with this divine higher self God force, you are immune from the attacks of black magicians. You still have to move energy, but you do it in a masterful way. For example, I had a situation where I had one particular person who was, for a week long, every day, they were purposely going out of their way to attempt to put energies into my reality. It's something as childish as going by and knocking on my door and then running away. It was that childish. But the thing is I mastered that reaction. There, of course, the thought came about, oh, that's, but no, this peace came over me, and I realized that all this energy, I notated it. I knew that at the right astrological moment, it would be allowed to be released in the most effective way. This is the will aligning with the higher self. This is the emotional fire becoming devotional intensity and sovereign clarity. The astral light is illuminated from above rather than stirred from below. This is the shift. Magicians move energy, theurgists channel source. And there's permutations between those two rankings or two ontological positions. And that is the sheer beauty or the sheer intensity, the sheer enjoyment of this path. Now, awakening the snake, sexual magic, esoteric language, the snake represents your vital astral force, your kundalini sexual energy. And that is essentially what a lot of this path is all about. I'm not going to get too much into that, but just realize that your sexual energy is the densest, most potent carrier of emotional charge. And when combined with intention, plus visualization and restraint, it magnifies astral light manipulation. Without mastery, it amplifies ego. With mastery, it amplifies God force alignment. Sexual magic is not about indulgence. It is about compression, redirection of vital charge. This is what I was referring to about many little repeated annoyances, allowing them to transpire, but not forgetting them, but essentially building up this charge, this emotional intensity about this particular situation. And when my higher self, when my God self communicated, when it was time to act through emotional fire, which involved imagination, visualization, and emotional intensity, and the direction of that emotional fire, that became the astral light as universal agent. This entered into the field of angels and demons, the key of powers and the repository of empires. So this emotional fire in third density emotion is experienced. It controls or it is suppressed. In higher densities, emotion becomes communicative light. Color, tone, and intentional charge carry information. Communication is multidimensional. Emotional fire is necessary because thought without emotion is flat. Emotion without will is chaos. Will without alignment is tyranny. Emotional fire equals emotion plus will plus alignment. And the true battlefield of the astral light is not angels versus demons. It is unintegrated fragments versus unified higher self. And at the low level, the astral field dominates you, those who suppress their emotions or don't have a positive relationship with their emotions, a constructive relationship. The mid-level people deny this. At advanced, you shape it. And in the final, you transcend it while still operating within it. Within it. That is the example that I was sharing about being in this world, but not of it, to put it another way, and still operating within it. So emotional fire is your vital energy. Emotional charge, directed will, higher self-alignment. Conscious astral illumination. And this language of white versus black magicians is symbolic of polarity use. It's not moral absolutism. This is better thought of as negative energy, positive energy is how you process and harmonize and deal with these. And the astral light, though, amplifies intention, which is why purification precedes power, which is why the path ultimately, if you're committed to the highest path, is about purifying all of your animal nature. Meaning, I don't drink anymore. I don't have engage in many of the things that were severely damaging to my path prior, as I did in vast quantities prior to 2021. But since 2021, everything has been purified. The alchemist purifies, the magician directs, the theurgist aligns. And once alignment comes, the rest unfolds safely. It is a path of grace, dear viewer. When you can get to this certain level and not be your own worst enemy, and but it is also a path of understanding, of continual refinement. But all of this is about mastery of your emotions. The more that you are able to master your emotions, the more that you will master your destiny.